And here's what I do. It's really subtle, these little shifts from saying, you forgot your capital to check your sentence. What do you need at the beginning and the end is going to go from feeling criticized and embarrassed to empowered. After they catch themselves, if they're missing that capital letter or that period, then I'm like, see, you don't even need me. You knew to do that on your own. And what's even better than doing it perfectly the first time is being able to self-correct. You are a problem solver. And that is what makes a really good reader and writer.
Play on words.
Play on words.
This is Play on Words from Big City Readers.
Here's Miss Beth.
Hello, and welcome back to the Play on Words podcast from Big City Readers. I am your host, Miss Beth, and today I'm so stoked to be jumping into a listener question that is all about second grade writing. We talk a lot about inventive spelling, and people ask a lot of questions about correcting their child's spelling and what to do if their child doesn't take the I don't know how to do this. And you say, just stretch it out or do your best. And they really want to know if it's right. We talk a lot about this in some other episodes that we will link in the show notes. So today we're going to dive really specifically into the question, do we need to care if our second grader isn't spelling very well yet, as long as we're seeing gradual improvement? So this is a question from a listener, but you might have this specifically to your child, whether they're in kindergarten, first, second, or third grade. That's kind of the area we're going to be sticking to today as we dive into this topic. So I can tell you right now, if you're wondering this question, you are a thoughtful parent and you are already involved in your child's developmental reading, writing, academic journey. So take a little bit of an exhale for a second before we dive into what you should and shouldn't do here. I know you probably feel like you don't want to nitpick, but you also don't want to miss something. And spelling is really tricky. I often am giving examples of how to correct if you have a 5-year-old that is writing COT for cat and how to fix that middle sound or why that's developmentally appropriate depending on your child's age. But I know it can get a little bit trickier and more confusing as your child is in second and third grade. We don't want to see as many errors, but you're probably not a teacher or a reading specialist and don't know what they have learned in school unless you are like super parent and can have like memorized every spelling rule that has come home. It can be kind of tricky to keep up with what they should know. Like one of the spelling rules that you're going to learn in second grade is TION, like caution. And before that, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for your child to be able to spell it correctly. So in this episode, we are going to talk about what matters in second grade spelling, what doesn't matter yet, and how to respond without killing your child's confidence, and when support is helpful and what kind for your child. Okay, so this parent sent me a picture. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the spelling patterns I'm noticing in this picture. So it's really cute. It's a I am grateful for list. And it has a list of 11 things. It says my family, my stuffies, my teddy bear, my Barbies, my bed, my pillow, my blanket, my food, and my room. This mom asked this question. So, do we need to care whether our child is not spelling very well yet, as long as we're seeing gradual improvements? For example, in this list, I'm glad she's finally spelling my correctly. It was MI up until recently. But obviously, there's lots of other spelling errors. Like, she listens to the podcast, she's very involved, and she says, I know that I'm supposed to hold them accountable for what they have learned, but what beyond that should I know? This writing sample was something she did on her own initiative, so I was not going to nitpick the spelling, but it got me wondering if I even should care that much. Is that controversial? So if you've ever felt this way, you are not alone. I always start with the win. Spelling my the right way is a huge win. That is a high frequency word or a sight word that is pretty tricky. And for this child to have learned how to do that and corrected over the last few months is a big deal. So when I'm looking at the work with the child, I'll always start with celebrating what they've done well. So I do this with little kids and big kids. So if I'm working with a child and I give them a decodable sentence to write, a decodable sentence means it follows the phonetic patterns that we have already talked about. So That might look like the shark jumped very high. That child has learned ED, SH, AR. They've learned IGH. So I'm only giving them this sentence because I've already taught them these spelling rules and practiced them in isolation. So I know that this is what I can hold them accountable for. When they show me the sentence, I'm going to look for a few things first. I'm going to look for a capital letter and a period because that is something that we start in kindergarten. We should start noticing that we have a capital letter and a period at the end of our sentence. So those are two easy things. And here's what I do. It's really subtle, these little shifts from saying you forgot your capital to check your sentence. What do you need at the beginning and the end? Is going to go from feeling criticized and embarrassed to empowered. After they catch themselves, if they're missing that capital letter or that period, then I'm like, see, you don't even need me. You knew to do that on your own. And what's even better than doing it perfectly the first time is being able to self-correct. You are a problem solver. And that is what makes a really good reader and writer. So if you have someone who's like a little embarrassed if they're failing or has like that pushback because they want to do everything perfectly and they kind of shut down and you feel like you can't even have the lesson with them, this is the route to go. It's a really subtle shift from look, you forgot your capital to check the beginning and end of the sentence. If they already did that, that's the first thing I'm going to name. Oh my gosh, I noticed you did that. The second thing I'm going to name is something that we have been working on that they are doing well. So this might be my for this child. Also, backing up, if someone comes to you, if your child comes to you with this thing that they've done creatively on their own, this is not usually the time that I am going to focus on correcting. I'm going to notice their errors in this thing they do independently. And then I'm going to bring that into some writing practice that we might do the next day. So I might the next day say, hey, let's practice writing some sentences together. I am going to give you a sentence to write, and you're going to give me a sentence to write, and then we're going to correct each other's work. So then it takes away, like, we want to make sure that their creativity and their spelling don't conflict. So I like to separate them if possible. So that might look like we have spelling and word work practice, and then we have creative writing. And you don't touch that creative writing. You just make a mental note of it or a physical note of it about the spelling patterns you're seeing that they're struggling with in their creative writing. I'm a big fan of letting them create freely and not feeling so constricted. The writing process can be really overwhelming. There's so much happening when we write one single letter. We have the fine motor movements. We have the connection between our creativity and processing what we want to write. We have to think about how we spell that word. We have to think about how the sentence is formed. There's so much happening in that split second of a child writing the letter. And this is why it's really important to teach the letters the right way the first time, starting at the top, top down, left to right. That's how we write. That's how we read in English. I had a friend who was like, why is my 4-year-old writing backwards? He literally writes right to left, but the word is spelled correctly. And I was like, Arabic or Hebrew? Like, is it a different language? And she was like, actually, it could be. My dad, she was talking about her dad, his grandpa does write in Arabic. So you never know. Okay, so I am going to praise that they did this on their own. I'm going to say, oh my gosh, I love how thoughtful you are. I love how creative you are that you made this gratitude list. This is so cool. Do you want some feedback or are you just showing me? So let them, if they're in first or second or third grade, they can have the buy-in. They can let you know. Often I like to keep the creativity and the instruction a little bit separate. 2, look for the things they did well. Celebrate that. Oh my gosh, you remembered the capital letter. You remembered a period at the end. Sometimes I forget the period. It can be so hard to remember. And hey, you have been working on the word my, and you spelled it properly in all of these sentences that you made. I might even put a heart or a star next to that because if we think about how we're correcting, we're often like circling the negative things, but we're not circling the positive things. So if you can put a little star or a heart next to things they do well. Okay, then I'm going to look at maybe 1 or 2 things. I'm not going to correct too many things at the same time because if we just correct them and tell them how to spell the word, we're not really making an impact. We're just correcting them. They're like, okay, got it. Oh yeah, I remember. So I like to pick just 2 or 3 at a time, unless the pattern is the same. For example, if it's IGH and they spelled IGH, like they wrote the word might, MITE, or light, LITE. I'm going to take a dry erase word and I'm going to say, let's look at this word. Remember that pattern that says IGH, IGH, I? These words light and might have that long I. Then I'm going to tap the word with them with my 3 fingers. So I'm going to go thumb and pointer, middle finger and thumb, I, ring finger and thumb, I. And then I'm going to say, okay, write the first tap. What letter spells M? Write the second tap. I. What were we just talking about? How we spell long I, IGH. Last one, T. You could also do this with 3 boxes, sound boxes, and you could just have like a rectangle and put 2 lines in the middle so it has 3 boxes and have them practice putting that word in the boxes. That stores it in our brain in a different way that we need for more rapid recall when we're reading and writing. So I might just do that. I might just pick those 2 words. Because if we just look at like every error, they're going to look at how to correct it. We're going to lose the opportunity to focus on learning a spelling pattern or reminding ourselves how to check our work. And the last thing I do is I say, before I start correcting, I say, look at some of the words. I think some are spelled like how they're sounding, but I know that you know some of these patterns. So check your work before I check it. We want kids to get in the habit of checking their own work. So they've given us the consent. They're like, actually, yeah, give me some feedback on my spelling. Then we say, okay, you check it first. And then we're going to pick just a few to talk about the spelling patterns. We're not going to just talk about all the spelling patterns at the same time, unless they're up for it. But I think that would be kind of a lot if they have, let's say they spelled TION wrong, and they spelled IGH wrong, and they spelled magic E wrong. So they missed all of these rules. That's kind of a lot to process in that one moment of them bringing their creative work to you. So pick a few things. That doesn't mean we ignore them forever. That means we're just focusing on that in that moment. You're going to take a note that they were struggling with a few other patterns and come back to that. You can either bring it to a parent-teacher conference. You can ask the teacher, I've noticed that she is spelling all words with IGH the wrong way. Is there something I can do at home? So just make a little note about what you see and what patterns seem to be a struggle. If it is a pattern that they're always getting that IGH wrong, or they're always getting TION, or they're always getting AR mixed up with ER, R versus see if you note that, and you can ask their teacher if they have seen that in the classroom and if they have any advice. I always like to think about errors as information, not as failure. And if you can get that message into your child's head, that is going to be a game changer for how they talk to themselves and feel about themselves when they're writing. So I'm going to use this example. So one of the words they spelled that they were thankful for is family, but they spelled family FABILY instead of FAMILY. Now this I would technically consider still phonetic spelling, because a lot of times kids don't actually know the sounds, and this is why phonemic awareness is so important. So if I notice that error, or an error that you can kind of go, okay, she's writing fably, she's kind of like making it a little nasalier, have her watch your mouth or look in the mirror or use the phone if they're obsessed with screens like most kids are. Use it to your advantage and say, let's watch our mouths when we say the word family. Family, fably. Our lips still come together for both of those sounds. But do you hear any difference or feel any difference in your mouth when you go b, So the big difference between M and B is M is a continuous sound. That means you can keep holding it until you run out of breath. And B is a stop sound. So you can keep holding it. But B, you have to let the air out, because if you kept holding it, that sound buh, we're adding an extra letter. We're adding that U sound, that afterwards. So it's not buh, family, fably. So see if they can kind of notice that on their own. Take the time. I know it seems like tedious, but this is actually going to help in the long run to look in the mirror, to talk about the sounds, to look at each other's mouths, and you can be silly about it. You can say like, oh my gosh, that feels like it's like vibrating on my lips. It feels so silly. Does it feel weird to you? The more fun you're having, the more it's going to stick. Okay, another thing about this list that this parent sent me is the errors are all pretty consistent. So family versus family is phonetic spelling. There's not a lot of signs of random letters or avoidance of letters. So this writing shows me that the child is applying what they know and they're not wildly guessing or just giving up. So if you see like FAM for family, they're kind of giving up. They're saying either it's too hard or they're too frustrated. If they're just randomly throwing random letters, a lot of kids do this. I see this a lot with first graders. They start just throwing a random E. And if I say, okay, like you wrote the word sock, SOK, something is missing. And I know that you know this pattern. Let's tap it out. And they go, I know. And they add an E or they add LE. They just start thinking of any spelling rule they've learned, not actually putting it into context the right way. So they're like SOKCE. And they're not really thinking about it. So I have to remind them to slow down and tap the word out with me. Sock. So they were closer when they had just SOK. But of course, then I would say, remember, C and K both make the K sound, and they both make the K sound when they're together. That's usually at the end of a word, and especially when it's a one-syllable short vowel word, like sock or tuck or clock. We hear that short vowel sound. And then we know, I like to say it like the vowel is short. It needs both C and K to protect it. So it can't just be ending in C. It can't just be ending in K. But usually when it's a long vowel, like poke, it just needs the K. It doesn't need C and K. And usually when we hear the K sound at the end of a word, it's not going to be C. That's usually more toward the beginning of a word. So this is a rule that they will learn in first and second grade, actually some in kindergarten, depending on the curriculum, and then you can remind them of that. So you don't just throw the rule at them without having taught it to them in the first place. And if you're like, how do I even know what I'm supposed to know to teach them? My first grade boot camp course is the best option for you. There are 20 lessons, over 20 lessons, and they are all about 15 minutes that I go through with your child, all about spelling and how to correct. And I teach them the self-talk that they need, and I teach you as well. There's also a whole parent section that comes with it, and there's 20 spelling rules that you learn and practice and master in that course. So check it out at bigcityreaders.com. If this sounds like you would love to have someone support you through this, this is exactly why I made our first grade boot camp course. Okay, so let's talk about what's developmentally appropriate really quickly. So second grade is a transition year. Kids are moving from phonetic spelling to spelling patterns, and they have some memorized spellings, and there's just a lot going on in second grade. It's a big year. Actually, kindergarten, first, and second grade, I think are all basically 2 years. Like it just moves so fast, and there's so much learning happening. So what gradual improvement actually looks like, there are some concrete markers like same word spelled closer to correct over time. So maybe it's family today, but 2 months ago it was like FABILE. So is it getting closer to the spelling over time? Are there fewer omissions, or are they changing or leaving out letters? Are they beginning to self-correct? And is there an increase in their writing volume? So progress doesn't necessarily mean fewer mistakes every week. It just means better attempts. Okay, so again, I'm just going to address the accountability question. Should parents correct this? I think that there are two buckets we have. We have the creative time, and then we have the time to nitpick. And you can make those two buckets how often or frequently as you want. But when they're doing creative time, I like to separate it into two different things. Creative time, I'm not correcting your work. I just want to see all of your ideas. I want to know what you're thinking. I'm so proud of you. I'm still proud of you when you make mistakes and when we're doing dictation where I give you sentences to write. But in that time, I'm going to look at your spelling patterns and I'm going to hold you accountable. So when I pay closer attention, or here are some red flags, if you will, if the same simple words aren't improving over months and you have worked on them, so like that word sock being spelled SOK, and in that moment saying, let's tap it, talking about the rule of CK at the end of the word, and then it continues to be spelled SOK, or clock is spelled CLOK, like that pattern that you know you've talked about, and you've practiced isn't improving over time, that's something I would pay attention to. Spelling errors that don't match the sounds at all, definitely pay attention to that. If the child avoids writing or has meltdowns around it, and if you're noticing that their reading and spelling are significantly behind. And I know that's tricky to know what that means. What does behind mean? And I don't want you to compare them to a friend or a sibling if you don't know. Like your teacher should tell you, although I did just work with a family this week who they said that the child was where they needed to be, but he was 2.5 years behind after my assessment. So I was very disappointed to hear that because the parents knew. They were like, I know that he's not where he needs to be. So if you have questions, ask your teacher. If you don't feel like you got the answer, ask me. I always have my DMs open, Big City Readers on Instagram. DM me a picture of your child's independent writing, and I will direct you on what you need to do, what you need to ask, and if that looks normal. So please, please, please take advantage of that. I want you to have all the resources that you need. Okay, so all of those things I just listed, one alone does not raise alarm bells. Those are just a few things to pay attention to. Okay, so how can you support your child without becoming the spelling police? Dictation over worksheets. Don't do worksheets, do dictation. What I just told you, take some decodable sentences. If you don't know, take a decodable reader that came home from school and just give them that as a sentence. So like look at the book and say the sentences like the shark jumped high. Give them that sentence. Say, I want you to think about the sentence. I want you to think about the spelling patterns. I want you to do your best work. And I am going to look at it with you and we're going to see how you did. And they're probably going to be like, give me another one. Kids, I find, love dictation. Again, message me if you need more sentences. Word study, not word lists. Study word patterns, not memorizing word lists. And talk about words out loud. Say, what sounds do you hear when you're just driving and you think of a new word? And ask them, does that look right? Get them thinking about how to check their own work and not just ask the adult if it's correct. So I hope this helps a little bit. You don't need perfect spelling to raise a strong writer. You need safety, practice, and time. If you have any questions about this topic or anything else, I will link some more blog posts where we dive deeper on my website, Big City Readers. I'll link those in the show notes. I'll link a few other episodes about writing in the show notes. But send me your questions, email hello@bigcityreaders.com or send me a DM, Big City Readers on Instagram. But you have what it takes. You are your child's best teacher, and you don't need to be an expert speller to help them feel successful. You got this, and I got your back. I'll see you next time.